Okay, so the text block is now complete. It's been stuck down, it's solid and dry, and got these nice sort of raised bands emerging here. I also took the opportunity to put holes in the boards and rethread them, so these boards are now attached. So basically we do have admittedly very naked book, but we have a book once again. So we're in a position now where we can start to think about what leather that we want to use here. Now, in terms of the overall design of how I want to restore these boards, I've ordered a paper that looks pretty similar to this. It has some of the more of the sort of, I don't know, sort of circular mottling that's sort of more present in this design, but with the colours of this. So I think it's going to look quite, it's quite a conservative sort of mix, but I think it'll look quite nice on here. So we're heading for basically a leather quartering. We'll have a nice leather spine that comes over the edge here, covers these sort of bundles where we've got the twine, and we'll have some nice corners as well in leather with this nice paper here in the middle. So that's the plan. So time to choose what sort of leather we can use. Now, when I restored this book, which was Corneli Janseni, this was a 1661 book. I used this really nice sort of French calf, 300-year-old French calf leather, and that leather comes from these bindings, which I have quite a big quantity of. The unfortunate thing is the bindings just aren't quite big enough height-wise for me to do the same here. I guess I could, in theory, cut a slice this way, but then I'd have a really awkward sort of blemish or whatever here where this gilding is. So that's really not going to work. So this, unfortunately, is kind of off the table. So we need to look at other alternatives for the leather we want to use. So if I scoot over here, I've got sort of 4 alternatives that have emerged, and it's probably worth just taking some time to talk through each and what the kind of pros and cons are, so that my thinking kind of makes sense. So option 1 is this leather here. This is a thick, stiff leather. And this is the largest piece of it I have. I've got another smaller piece here. It has the advantage that a very thick leather like this will actually take stamping extremely well. So this could be a very good surface for creating some nice labeling. The drawback are twofold, maybe threefold. The first is this piece is going to be very, very tight to actually get a piece that's big enough to fit around here. It can be done, but it's going to be a close run thing. Additionally, the result's really going to be quite stiff. It's going to be one of those cases where you open the board and it goes like that, because the leather is going to be kind of fighting you. So that's going to be a little bit unhelpful. It also, it's quite a plain leather. So the result of it, if I was to use this leather, I think would look a little bit like this. Now, this was restored by a professional, and I bought this as you see it here. So, I'm never going to get these sorts of fancy tooled sort of raised bands, but if you're sort of looking between at the actual leather itself, that's kind of what we will end up with if we use that piece of leather. I will also just add that this restorer made the decision to glue the leather straight down onto the spine, which for me is a bit of a mortal sin, because it means that the book only flexes here along one very thin point, which means eventually this will actually fail along here quite quickly, I think, actually. Anyway, so that was choice number one. Choice number two is this black leather. I haven't actually restored any books in black as yet. This leather is quite thin and flexible. It also has this sort of bobbly surface here, which is a little bit atypical from how I've seen leather being used to quarter books, but you know, it's not necessarily unattractive. This does have the advantage of being quite a big piece, so you know, I could there'd be plenty for me to work with here, and I've got this extra piece here which I could use for the corners, so quantity would not be a major problem. With this being sort of quite thin and bobbly, I question how well this would take stamping. And you know, the other thing is we would need to stick the leather down onto some card here to give it some rigidity and also allow these bands to sort of show through. So you know, not a perfect solution, but certainly an option, and at least we have a good quantity of it. So that's option two. Option three is this. I quite like this, actually. This is probably the closest leather that I have to how this book was professionally restored. It's also quite flexible. I think it would go quite nicely, just to bring this other book back, I think it would go quite nicely with a marbled paper that's this sort of colour mix. So I think it would be a sort of pretty safe, conservative combination of colours. Two drawbacks. The first is there's this blemish here. And the other thing is, again, the piece is not huge, so it's going to be quite tight. And I think I can probably just about do it. But if I place the book like this, I probably have enough leather to play with here. And on this side, I think I can remove the blemish section and I'll have just enough here. But again, it's going to have to be, it's going to be quite tight. So this piece here is although it's long enough, it's just a little bit too thin. I mean, there's a good quantity, so I have plenty to do leather cornering and so on and so forth. It's just about finding a piece that's wide enough to actually be able to cover the spine appropriately. So, but I think from a colour standpoint and just a look and feel, I think this could actually result in a really, really nice look for the book. Option 4 is this. This is a really large piece. I'd have no concerns whatsoever about having sufficient. It's quite thick, it's quite soft, and it does have this bobbling. I probably am not, this is probably my fourth preference, simply because I don't think the look of the leather really matches somehow. I think a large piece like this is best saved for a really enormous folio. I think a really huge book. And I think then it would be okay and justifiable to have a piece that, you know, looks very different from standard leathers. You know, I'm saying that in the spirit of the previous restoration I did of the Church History of Great Britain, which was a similar thing. It was a really enormous book. And so having a bit of a custom job here I thought was absolutely fine. So those are the options. I also, I think because we've got options, if I mess one up, I can always choose one of the others as well, which I guess is kind of convenient. My decision is probably going to be this. It's going to be tricky. I want to trim this in such a way that I can remove this blemish. So probably trimming down like this, as close to the blemish as possible. Like so. And then hopefully that gives me enough to play with here. Yeah, I think that will just about work. So we're going to try and trim this first, and if we get a good piece that we think this is going to work here, our next step will be to add some reinforcing cardboard along here that we can glue the leather down onto. Cardinal rule, of course, don't glue the leather directly to the spine, because that just sets you up for a failure of the leather in the future from opening of the board. So we'll try and trim this to size. We'll put card on here, and then we'll give it a go. Okay, so I've mounted the book between my boards. Now normally these would have bolts going through them, but the book's too big for that, so I've had to improvise this situation here with a couple of bookends and some heavy weights either side. Probably worth just showing you. I've got the text block actually resting on this kind of plinth of shims here, not the outside board. So the text block's actually holding the weight at this point, and that allows the boards to sort of hang down to the side, which means that we have the right sort of, the boards are in the right place where we want them ultimately, with the right length of string here. And what I've done then is just snipped away these strings to a final sort of short length, because these are going to be covered by cardboard in a moment and ultimately by leather. So we're now in a position to put in the card coverings. So here they are. Just a little bit just of nomenclature. F means the front of the book, B means the back, T means the top of the book, and that's just my rudimentary way of making sure that I put them on the right way round and not that way round. I've trimmed, as you can see, there are holes along the edge. Those line up with the bundles of twine that are coming through the holes in the boards, and it's worth just emphasizing the real strength of attachment of the boards to the text block is through the raised bands and this twine. It's not through the fabric, and it won't be through this cardboard, and it certainly won't be through the leather, although they contribute a little bit, but it's these lengths of twine that really do the hard work here. So what I'm going to do is now attach these. I've done this, in most of the other restorations I've done as well. If you've interest, have a look at this Ferettra del Divino Amore, 1586, where I went through the process in detail of how to do it. But I'm going to skip through it relatively sort of quickly here. The big message I will reiterate though is, as I'm gluing this, no glue must get onto the text block. Nothing must attach the cardboard directly to this text block surface. This is now an independent unit in effect, and it's finished. The purpose of this card is to actually be glued to the leather covering, so that we end up with, in effect, an inner spine, this text block, separated from an outer spine, which is what's visible externally of the leather. And the reason for that is, if we go back to the previous restoration I did again, when we open the book, we want the leather to flex away from the text block. And what that does is it means all of the leather is working to handle the change in angle. That means that the leather itself isn't going to wear out so quickly. If you glue the leather directly down to the spine, there's only one pivot line for the leather to actually flex as you open and close the book, and eventually that'll wear the leather out and the board will come free. So that's the rationale. So let's make a start. So starting with this guy. Reasonably generous here. So I'll just leave that there for a moment while I do the other one. Now, what I'm going to do now is put these in place. Oops. And just temporarily, just because I've only got two hands, I'm just going to put a pin in just to hold that in place there. Same thing on this side. Again, temporarily, just to make my life easy, I'm going to put a pin through there. Now I can lift this guy up. A little bit of judicious folding, let the card go to where you want it to. This card is made out of old kitchen roll. It varies in thickness a little bit, so just need to work at it. Now what I'm going to do is I want these actual pieces of card to glue to each other. So what I'm going to do is put a segment of glue here. Again, only on the card, not on the spine. Again. Now do the one I haven't done. All right. Now I want these to glue such that it's quite a tight fit, because I want this card to sit down against the text block, and that'll help the raised bands to actually show through the leather. So I'm going to just use pins now to hold the card in place. And this may take a couple of goes just to get the positioning absolutely right, because we also need these holes to be over the bundles of twine. Now I'm in that situation, I want to fold this down. To do that, I'm going to remove this plinth that the text block's been sitting on. That's going to now drop the book between the boards. And this may just need a little bit of the helping hand here. There we go. Again, just making sure that that didn't work. There we go. There we go. Yeah, that's what I'm after. Just need an extra pin here. Alright. Now I'm in a position to really make sure that the cardboard's in the right place. And basically I'm now going to push that all together. I may actually just slip a piece of kitchen towel in there. What that just does is it'll accelerate the drying process just a little bit by offering a sort of a desiccated medium's moisture from the glue to go into. It also helps just avoid the cardboard sticking to the improvised clamp here. Pull it down with my fingers. Make sure that cardboard is going to be exactly where I want it to be. Now's my opportunity if I need to adjust any of these guys very slightly. I think they just sit down a little bit tighter like that. You may find the length here is a little longer than it needs to be. That's fine, just give it a trim. There we go. Alright. Same with you. Okay, I'm going to leave that to dry. Yeah. There may be a little bit of adjustment I need to do at some point. No great problem if that happens, but hopefully that'll be where we need to be. We'll have a bit of show through of the raised bands there as well. Now, I did trim the leather. Good news is it, I think, is big enough. This will cover the cardboard. So we're going to have a nice sort of spine, and it's also long enough as well. That's the other good bit of news. We'll use this bit for the corners, and so I think we'll then be all set for the arrival of the marbled paper in the mail. Okay, so we've now really sort of finished sort of setting the spine. Now, in terms of the leather, you'll notice that it's wet. And there's a question to ask, which is, this was a very, very supple leather. Why on earth do we need to wet it? And the answer to that is I am worried about the length of the leather. It leaves very, very little to fold over. So I've wet it and I've been stretching it just to see if I can get an extra quarter or half inch out of it, so that I can sort of pin it down and force it to dry in situ in a stretched state. So that's why this is wet. So I'm now going to take this out, just dampen it off here. There's plenty of kitchen roll, just to get rid of the worst of the free water. As a general rule, water and books don't mix, obviously, but sometimes when you're dealing with a truculent leather, it needs must. I'm just sponging the loose water out of the hair side of the leather so that we don't completely dilute the glue or soften the cardboard, indeed, that this leather is going to be adhered to. Okay, so I'm now going to move, just get my glue here. So I'm now going to move reasonably quickly. I've got quite a few sort of bulldog clips, and I'm now going to adhere this leather into place on the spine. There's so little room to play with that I'm not even going to, normally on other restorations you'll see that I cut a notch here for the fold over. I actually don't think I've got the enough leather to even do that here. So this is just going to be a case of glue. Just going to check straightness. Just going to trim this a little here. It won't matter anyway because this edge is going to be ultimately covered by the marbled paper. So I'm going to put a reasonable dollop of glue here to start, and we'll make a beginning. So just put glue here. Again, usual rule applies. No glue on the fabric of the textbook, only on the cardboard and the board itself. Okay, I think we may have succeeded in our stretching. I think we may have a little bit to play with here, in which case I may end up cutting a notch. We'll see. Okay, yeah, fingers and thumbs. Put that there. Into a fold there, and we'll see if we have any length to play with, and I think we might. So I'm going to be, I think the stretching has actually served us well. So what I'm going to do is undo what I've done here like that, and I'm actually going to cut a little notch. That allows me to fold over a slightly longer piece of leather without getting into trouble. So, all right, now we go again. Just a bit more glue. For a bit more distance. Get that fabric out of the way. Paper clips. That'll just help keep this fold over in place as well until the leather dries and attaches to itself, basically. leather to be reasonably equidistant on both sides, and clearly we want the leather to be covering the cardboard on both sides, which it is. Yeah. It looks like my stretching experiment has worked quite nicely. So what I'm now going to do, I'm going to be bold. I'm actually going to cut this section off. Like that. Then I'm going to again make a notch here. You may need to extend that notch a little bit. We'll see if it's big enough. There we go. So I've put this in here, and now we can really go for it with the gluing. This stretching really, with the wetness, really did work actually, so I can be a little bit more aggressive with this notch. Take this out. This may just go off camera shot for a second here while I'm working. I'm just doing exactly the same fold over process at the bottom here. Now I'm going to use this opportunity just to really try and straighten and true up everything. I've got an opportunity just to bring this round a little bit. Just so it's more symmetrical. Now, I'm acutely aware I've introduced a lot of water into the situation. So I'm going to just put absorbent paper here. I just want to try and protect the text block from any unwarranted movement of either water or glue. Okay. Okay. This is going to take a while to dry, and the glue is not bonding at the moment because it's too wet. So what I'm now going to do is prepare the brace for this book. What that'll do is it'll hold everything in place, it'll put pressure on the sides, put pressure in the back. That'll actually help to, insofar as is going to be possible, have the raised bands show through the leather a little bit, although I'm not holding out much hope because this is quite a soft leather, and there is quite a thickness of card under there as well. But maybe, we'll see. So I'm going to put create quite a high pressure clamp now on this book. If you want to see how that's done, probably the best playlist to look at once again is Feretro del Divino Amore 1586, where I go into doing that in detail. But yeah, so that's basically it. So that's going to be allowed to sort of set and dry under the pressure of the clamp. Now, the corners are going to be the next job, and I took the opportunity to trim these. I go through how to create leather corners in a lot of detail in the playlist for this 1661 book, Corneli Genseni, Inquilibus Moises, etc., etc. This leather quartering. So I do that. I show that in quite a lot of detail there. But just to repeat, the magic mathematical formula. If this is the width that you want the corner to come in from, this width here, you cut rectangles, and the rectangles have a length that's equal to twice the width plus the thickness of the board. That's the magic formula, and that's how you get nice corners. So we'll do that next once the spike is dried. Okay, so that's the brace complete. So this leather will now dry in situ. As it dries, it's going to want to shrink. So it may end up being somewhat less supple actually by the time all is said and done here. But either way, this is now going to dry. And then we'll move on to the next video to do the corners and put on the marbled paper when it arrives.